Hello, everyone. I thought I would give some thoughts on constructive criticism, or my thoughts on constructive criticism. Now, one thing that I will say is that the vast majority of criticisms that you will see online are not really constructive in the least. Because most, let's say, reviews of things online, um, whether negative or positive in some ways, but tend to be very vague. Like they don't actually give specifics. Like you'll see a review that will say this was horrible, awful. It had bad writing. But very rarely do these reviews ever give specific examples of what they mean. And such reviews aren't constructive at all in terms of like helping an artist improve because they're general. You can't actually apply such observations, and so and if for example, and in some cases a writer might go back or an artist might go back and fix things that don't need fixing because they're thinking, oh, like if a review says, oh, there were a lot of cliches. Well, without giving any specific examples, well, how is the writer supposed to know what's a cliche in their book and what isn't? And so they could end up fixing something that doesn't even need fixing. So general types of criticisms are not constructive in the least because they don't actually give any examples or illustrations. And I would say that like 95% of criticisms online are like that. And of course, even when some examples are given, to me, inflammatory language like awful or terrible, that's not a sign that someone wants to be constructive. That's obviously done to such words are obviously there to incite anger and inflame anger, and so they're not there to actually be constructive or helpful when people use words like that. And I only think very poor critics will use terms like awful or terrible or something like that. And of course, another thing though is that what some critics also don't realize is that some people say that, oh, well, if you're an artist, you have to learn to take criticism because people are going to be evaluating your work. Well, fair enough. But as someone who gives criticism, you also can't be surprised if the artist responds or someone dishes criticism back at you. Especially because a lot of people like to hide behind the label, the term, oh, I'm just giving constructive criticism, man. Don't attack the critic, which in many cases, of course, they're not giving constructive criticism, but also, as a critic, you also have to learn to take criticism yourself. I mean, you can dish it, but you also have to know how to take it as well. And yeah, so a lot of critics, ironically, can't take criticism, and most of what critics say is constructive criticism. In fact, it's not constructive criticism. It's just a way for them to shield themselves from criticism in many cases. But even to me, constructive criticism is when someone says something like, "Here's what I think this book," just to give an example, could have done better. I was disappointed in these areas. Here are the areas where I think the book could have done better. Then they list specific examples, and so to me that would be a constructive criticism. However, even when a criticism is constructive, the artist or writer is under no obligation to listen to it because quite often um, the a critic a critic will base their criticism on what they think is a good book. Well, the author may have a very different idea of what makes a good book. So a writer is under no obligation to listen to so-called constructive criticism, even when it is well thought out. But again, most criticism is not well thought out, and so those are my feelings on constructive criticism.